Fruitful Alternatives to Industrial Agriculture by Blake Zulanis for English Writing 302. Bread. What can be more symbolic of making peace or providing for others than bread? In literature, it's shown up in famous spots like the Bible or in Geoffrey Chaucer's Pardoner's Tale, where it's depicted as a mode for making peace among people. Farming, much like bread, is symbolic of humans' relationship with earth, in that it is symbolic of humans lovingly cultivating life from the earth, as seen in how D.H. Lawrence describes farming with intimate diction in his novel, The Rainbow. But in our modern era, classical symbols don't match reality. Industrial farms have become pillaging machines that drain the earth of its precious resources, often merely for profit. A bit of context. Through the 20th century, when the Industrial Revolution caused a global population boom, farmers felt compelled to optimize food production to meet a surge in food demand. This sparked the Green Revolution, where farmers interbred certain crop species to make more fruitful crops. These crops drained more resources from the soil, however, and thus got many farmers reliant upon artificial fertilizers for their crops to grow. That, paired with the burgeoning corporatizing philosophy of the 20th century, led to our industrial farms of today. So, what's the damage and what can be done? Well, to start off, agriculture first became industrialized to feed more people and to increase food security for everyone. However, despite these industrial practices, food insecurity has been on the rise. This is because being food secure means you have to have the right nutrition to support a healthy lifestyle. Many factors play into why many are becoming food insecure, including but not limited to fast food, processed foods, food waste, and the fact that much of the crop produced by farms is just silage, also known as for-profit livestock feed. In the United States, the USDA reports a whopping 31% of food goes to waste. This can be counteracted by households becoming more cognizant of what they buy and eat. This means knowing where your food comes from and what the label date on it means and keeping track of what you waste. But industrial farms must change their ways too. They cannot keep producing silage to return profit and expect to fix hunger. The ideal farm in this case would be small ones which provide crop directly to the consumer. But industrial agriculture has other evils to answer to. Bees dying, people being poisoned, and soils expiring. These, among others, are the environmental effects of industrial agriculture. With the creation of the monoculture, which is where a single crop is planted in spaced rows and harvested on the same plot each season, farms have become wells for herbicides and pesticide chemicals to keep spaces in monocultures from being weed territory. These poisons leach into groundwater and spread elsewhere, killing wildlife and poisoning humans. Aside from the monoculture and the continuous use of chemical fertilizers for Green Revolution crops, aside from the continuous use of the monoculture is the use of fertilizers. These fertilizers are used in increasing amounts as farmers' hybrid crops drain more and more nutrients than the soil originally had. What's left over after repeated use is dead soil with no more use. Not to mention, Natasha Gilbert reports that phosphorus, a mineral in fertilizers which is mined from natural deposits, will have no more mineable deposits by 2050. So this current mode of agriculture is en route to complete destruction. Daniel Imhoff instead envisions a different kind of farm for the future. One where the wild may roam between crops and where monocultures become polycultures, where the space between crops is full of life. Where farms are a symbiosis between human and nature, having human crops thrive alongside wild plants. This brings agriculture back to that symbolic relationship with nature we discussed earlier. The third, and perhaps the most emotionally tolling, is the damage large industrial farming conglomerates have done to farmers' families and their livelihoods. Larry Rulland was a generational farmer in Minnesota who unfortunately took his own life back in 2006. Larry is not an isolated case. There's a disturbing trend in farmers' mental health crises happening all across the United States and perhaps the world. Small family farmers in the Anthropocene era have to compete with soulless industrial farming conglomerates that outperform them in production, prices, and availability. This, plus the generational pressure to make a farm succeed, or the corporate pressure to meet a production quota in environmentally damaged times, pinches the psyche of many farmers. Industrial agriculture must be dissolved, for studies have found that smaller, autonomous farms concerned with only providing for themselves and their communities have had a much greater ability of autonomy, sovereignty, and satisfaction than competing for profit with gargantuan conglomerates. Industrial farms have failed to uplift food security, have failed to maintain the loving balance with nature that many farmers once had, and have failed the farmers that work them. The future instead necessitates farms that are integrated with the wild, that they become food-oriented over profit, and that they are owned by the farmers to provide for the communities instead of some abstract corporate entity. Thank you.